Hmm. All right, we want to welcome Coach Jake Gwin here onto the Olé Soccer podcast. We appreciate everybody that is tuning in, whether it's live, whether it is on YouTube, whether one of us shared it or a good friend recommended this interview. We appreciate you joining and being part of these uncertain times right here. But we're trying to provide the most value for coaches, for players, for parents in wanting to improve their game. We got a special guest, Coach Jake Gwin, current men's soccer coach at Moorpark College, which is just outside the San Fernando Simi Valley, about right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, multiple Coach of the Year, CIF champ, former professional player. We're going to get into his journey. A soccer dad as well, club soccer dad. So we're going to get into what it means to build a championship level team, what mindset you got to have as a coach, what you go through. And then we're going to even touch on a little bit about what it means to be a parent as well for a competitive player. So we'll get into that here today. So we're excited to get started. Coach Jake Gwin, how are you? Welcome.
Very good. Thanks, Coach, for having me on. Really excited about this as well.
Great. We want to get started. We want to learn a little bit more about you and your journey and how you grew a love for the beautiful game and where it started, and a little backstory before you start. I don't know if you know, but your dad was my principal at Kennedy. I don't know if I think I've mentioned it to you before.
I don't remember, yeah, but that's a cool little 6 degrees of separation there. So
yeah.
Well, better that he was your principal than the dean at Granada Hills, and you were in his office at times. So that, I get those stories as well from some teachers that I work with. I was always in your dad's office, when he was the dean. So that's great. So you played for Fred then?
Yeah, I did. I was at Kennedy.
All time. Yeah, great. So I grew up in the San Fernando Valley, right over in the Balboa Park area, just behind there by the wash. I think everybody who lives in San Fernando Valley kind of knows where that is.
Yeah.
And, this was the early 70s, and soccer wasn't real big by any means at that point. And, at 4 or 5 years old, we started playing at Balboa Park, right? And as the story goes from my parents, they say they're the ones that started the Region 33 area there. So, that's kind of what all kids did in the 70s. They played, soccer in the fall, and then basketball winter, and baseball spring. And that was kind of my rotation, like a lot of other kids. And soccer just kind of, I was talking with Mac on the run. I was telling you that we went running on, and around, was it 76, 78 was kind of when the LA Aztecs started up. And I think Johan Cruyff was on the team at that time. And so I don't know if it was because I liked saying his name or because he was the best player in the world at the time. I have a book here from him as well. I just finished. So I started to really identify with him. And, my parents both coached. My dad was my coach up until I was about 13 years old. And so I kind of started doing soccer half the year, baseball the other half the year. I was actually better at baseball than I was at soccer. And there was a little bit of that split in high school. This is just a funny story as well, if I don't get too long-winded. And I'll segue into that. In high school, I was playing baseball and soccer, and in the mid 80s, everybody was short and clean cut. It was the George Steinbrenner era of baseball. You can't have any facial hair, nothing sticking out your cap. And my coach at Taft High School was the same. And he's like, you want to make this team, son, you better cut your hair. So I did, 9th and 10th grade, and I made the team. But then in between 10th and 11th grade, I started getting into rock music and guitar, and, they called me Jake Bon Jovi because I had these long, beautiful flowing locks. They called me a rock jock, right? And I couldn't play baseball anymore, but at soccer, they didn't care at that time in the late 80s. I can kind of show my personality. And so it was really in those later years at Taft High School. And I was on a pretty good club team in the Valley with Terry Davila, Teddy Davila, some other names I'm sure you know. And we ended up going to Europe together in '89. And so that's kind of where I think the seeds of my love for soccer started. And I ended up going to UC Davis and playing there. I did want to become a veterinarian at the time, and I was animal science for 2 years. And then I kind of started to realize that I could score goals. I wasn't technically as good as everybody else, but I was tall. I was a classic forward. I knew how to finish. I knew how to put the ball in the goal. But I still wasn't as good as everybody else in my mind. But my junior year in college, so around 92, 93, something happened, probably broke up with a girlfriend or something, just, threw me haywire, and I just dove into soccer. I mean, it was like an overnight thing where I couldn't get enough of it. And I just wanted to be the best. And I kind of had that thing, like I think Joe DiMaggio had. I just want when people walk down the street to say, hey, there goes the best player ever. And so I think I had a little bit of that in me. Like, I don't know if I could ever be the best player, but I thought if I worked hard enough, if I just practiced hard enough and trained hard enough, I could, at least, people might go, hey, there goes the soccer guy. And so, I kind of identified with that. And I kind of became the soccer guy in Davis for a couple of years. I worked at the soccer shop. I woke up in the morning, I trained, I went and worked, I studied. I went from like a barely 2.0 my freshman and sophomore year, where your classes are supposed to be easier, to like a 3.5, 3.7 my last couple of years, and really focused on my game and focused on my craft, and saw that, I saw my weaknesses. I knew how to work on my weaknesses. I knew what good players looked like, and I wanted to look like them. So there was modeling going on, and not a lot of I don't think I was ever really coached. Nobody ever said, hey, you got to open your hips up when you receive and face forward. But, the little things. So I kind of grinded my own way through it, just on observation. And then I as soon as I got my degree, and funny thing is, when I walked across the stage at Davis, my whole family was there, and a really proud moment for my father. And it's brilliant. I don't have a lot of regrets, but this is probably one of them. We were all just, hey, we're going to graduate college. This is great. Okay, what's next? Okay, we're going to go play soccer after this. And so you're supposed to hand your ticket to the president of the UC Regents, and he says your name as you walk across stage. And my buddies were saying, they were writing silly things down. I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to write Johan Cruyff. So I wrote Johan Cruyff, and this really great moment. My dad, my dad. He's by the book, and he's filming this thing, and it's, you just hear his pride breathe, and then he announces it. He says Johan Cruyff as I walk across, and he goes, "Oh, you bleepity bleep bleep bleep," and so that kind of lets you know where I was, but then also how I was really starting to identify who I was in the world. Right, I wanted to be an athlete. I wanted to be a soccer player, and this was also the '94 World Cup was going on when I graduated. So just shortly after graduation, I think I went to the Cameroon-Brazil game in Stanford. Wow. So it was a wonderful time of my development, my love, and my connection with the game of soccer, at really one of the best, I guess, times of soccer as it is now in the country. That 94, 95, 96, when MLS started in 96, I was in there. I was cutting my teeth in those USISL leagues and trying to make it. And, I never did, over the next 6 years or whatever it was, but, as is, that doesn't really matter. Right. It was the process, and it was the love, and it was the passion and the journey. When I look back on, I just picked up a tremendous amount of skills. And I, unbelievably, if you knew me when I was a young kid, I don't think you could say hard work was one of my qualities, hard work. But, anybody who knows me in my early, mid, late 20s and knows me now, hard worker. And that's one of those things I think, that's what you want, right? You want somebody who gives everything they can. That's the quality you want your players to have, some kids who just have some passion and work hard at it, because good things happen. So, and then obviously as the career starts to wind down, other things come into play, and I started teaching and coaching, and then, landed at Canoga in 1998. I was just a substitute at the time. And from then I took over the program, and then it just, timing was good. Where I was coaching was good. The players were good. I still had the love of the game and the love of learning. And, I never had a coach tell me how to coach. It was, learn by doing, learn by failing.
Yeah.
And so it's, when I look back and when they do write-ups on me, Daily News, Tark Patel, they put veteran coach Jake Gwin, and that's just started happening. And it's kind of, it's a cool thing. I did get one of those golden veteran CIF passes for years of service, and I'm looking back on that's, I could say every year that's passed, and I look in the previous, what was I doing? Right. And that, you think you're doing great, and then the following year comes along, and you're like, God, what was I doing?
Yeah.
And I still do that. What was I doing just last year? I got a lot to work on this year.
Yeah.
So that's, in a nutshell, I think there's a lot of stories in between there. I think that was a nice journey, a nice, little reliving of the last 20 years. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Yeah. No, there's a lot in that story, and I love to start with obviously the story, because I could see as you're telling the story, it brings back memories of you doing, you actually either entering the field for the first time, you being a coach for the first time, or any memory that just pops up that just brings joy to you, right? It's very important that we experience those things, whether we're still reminiscing, whether we look back at photos, whether we just talk about it. I think it brings joy, right? And every experience we have, whether as a player, whether as a coach, I think it's something that shapes us into the human beings, the coaches that we are, the players that we are, and makes us, whether we were the best at that point, like you're saying, you had that mentality. I just wanted to be the absolute best. That's your personality. That's what you wanted, right? And that brought out the best in you. And you had probably no idea when you were crossing that stage that you were going to be able to impact so many lives, fast forwarding, to help players that you personally shaped to become professional players now, right? That you personally help shape now to receive high school diplomas, that go on to college maybe for the first time, right? Your ripple effect, just by you wanting to be that type of person, has just created, just leaders within the San Fernando Valley, the California and John Soccer and beyond, right? And it's great to see that, because it starts with I believe the passion, the love, the obsession, right, for what you do. And you're a PE teacher, right? You've done multiple subjects, right? When I posted that we were going to do an interview, and people were like, "Oh, he was my teacher." I was like, "That's awesome," because
I was a math teacher.
And it's great to see that. Obviously, the education that you've received, right? Your dad obviously making sure that you had things in line. How important was the support from home to be who you were? You look back at it now as a parent. How important was that for you?
I've got to say that I've been one of the most fortunate people, humans, players, coaches, whatever you want to call it. My parents, all of them. I've got a lot of parents who've been in my life. Have been super supportive. From helping me get through those first couple of years at Davis, which were different. You go away from home from the first time. That's not easy, and there were some real difficult challenges. And some parents might want their kid to come back home. I'll take care. No, and they just guided me along the way really well. For my master's, I wrote this intro. That kind of was an ode to my mom and dad. And, my dad, I get my defensive philosophy from my dad, very rigid, very structured, good communication, don't take risks, right? Calculate on the side of safety. And I give my defensive, mind to my dad. And my mom is, she's out. She likes, to fly by the seat of her pants. She likes to be out there. She likes to go for things. Okay, don't be afraid to fail, do this. And so my offensive side is for my mom, because that's what you want from offensive, right? Go take some risks, go at players. Yeah. And it was really a wonderful piece. In fact, the guy that graded it said it was one of the best he's read. But from an emotional standpoint, just super supportive, whether it came to soccer, girlfriends, heartbreak, job losses, and I'm not just talking from, 15 years old and on, at almost 50 years old, there's a lot of ups and downs in life, losing a job, getting displaced from a job, and, the support, you'll get through it. This is part of how we grow. This is part of life, that we just gotta, put our nose to the grindstone and get through it, and we'll come out on the other side. And I guess part of that personality when I was a player of learning to develop a work ethic and hard work, that stuff helps. That stuff's help. Nothing is more important these days. They call it the growth mindset. About persistence and grit and just a stick-to-itness. I don't think anything is more important at this point in time than, and particularly now. I mean, it's easy to just kind of get caught up, at home. We're not really doing a lot, and things, people are going through some hard times, but you've got to be able to have a little bit of that grit to grind your way through it, and believe inside that at some point we'll come around. And so, my mom and dad and my stepmom and stepdads and, everybody has been super supportive. After I got my degree, which my dad was really happy about, obviously, and I was happy. It was the right way to go. I took off on what they call a psychosocial moratorium. So I just wanted to, after I had my degree, I'm going to, whoever pays me or gives me a bed to sleep in, that's where I'm going to go play. And I kind of did that for about 5 or 6 years. Didn't make any money, but like I said, the journey was awesome. I went from Milwaukee to Mexico to Cincinnati. Northern California up in Chico was just the best time of my life. And a lot of great people and great players up there that I'm still, friends with. If I didn't have parents to support me or to even say, maybe that's not the direction you want to go, who knows where I would be. I certainly didn't set out to be a teacher or a coach. I don't think anybody does, particularly when both your parents are in education and you see, I'm not going to be like them. That thing. And then all of a sudden, boom, doing the same thing and saying the same things that they do.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's key because as you're growing up, as you become a parent, you kind of see that, oh, now I see why my mom or my dad was saying that. Of course, yeah. So no,
there's a great old saying from Mark. I think it's Mark Twain. It's like something about when I was 18, my dad didn't know anything, but by the time I was 21. He sure learned a lot, and but isn't that kind of how it goes? We don't think mom and dad know what they're doing. We just we gotta fail up and learn ourselves, and then realize that when you're 50 years old, looking back,
I think they knew what they were doing. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I want to talk a little bit, obviously, about your awards. I want to talk about your teams, your high school teams, and of course, you're into the journey about obviously now at a Moorpark. So, I have Coach of the Decade Award, multiple Coach of the Year awards by Daily News. You have 5-time Mission Valley League champs. You have 6-time Sunset 6 League champs. I want to talk about that journey of when you took the program, where was it? What did you do to be able to just take it under your control and your guidance, your leadership, and then morph it into what it is now?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's a great question, and it's going to be another one of those stories where I'm going
Love it.
to bring joy to my face just to talk about it. You know, so when I started subbing at Canoga Park in '98, I didn't realize I was going to be there for the next 22 years, obviously, and it was kind of in that transitional time where I was 30, 31 at the time, yeah, something like that. And I wasn't excited about going away to play anymore. I wasn't excited about the 8-hour van rides. The daily grind, and I was a little more excited about making some money, some substantial money, because now there's some lovely ladies who want to be taken care of, that were in my life, lady, not ladies, who want to be taken care of, and so the program there at the time in '98, '99 was run by a guy. His last name was Camacho. He was a great guy. And so I still had a lot of player in me at that time, and still a lot of passion. Didn't know a lot about coaching at that time. My coaching in the early days was get stuck in.
Yeah.
Remember that back?
Yeah.
Go
Yeah.
get stuck in, play harder. I didn't know much about X's and O's or whatever it was, and then I took over the program, and in the third year of the program, and I just coached with a lot of passion. I coached by osmosis, so I would get out there and play with them, and I was better than them at that time. Not to say that I was great or anything, but so that was it was coaching by modeling, I should say.
Yeah.
And so in the third year there. We legit had the worst team in CIF. I think we were 1-12 or 1-13, and I remember the one game we won was by forfeit, because in CIF, if the head coach gets a red card, it's a forfeit. It's automatic forfeit. I don't remember what team we were playing, but at the end of the year, I was like, man, we got one win. It was kind of a joke, but something happened in between that third and fourth year. I'm remembering a couple of conversations with a couple guys, Brian Pulido and Jose, and they had said something which is just kind of tweaked a little bit of a coaching screw in my head, and we came back, and with that very same team, that exact same team, albeit we had one big transfer from Cleveland. His name was George Paez, and with that exact same team, with the addition of George Paez, we ended up on this unbelievable run, and we took CIF that year in my fourth year. And it was a truly worst to first story.
Wow.
And I look back at that team, and I look at player per player, and I cross-reference that with my championship teams later. I have no idea how we won that one. So that's just one of those, you look back and you go, wow, unbelievable run. And I got some kids on that team who are doctors now, Doctors Without Borders. So, that's just a great story of heart and determination, which is how we won that.
Yeah.
So then, Canoga started to get a little bit of a name. 2005, we had some great players. 2006, Quijano and Jeffrey Quijano, Eddie Ponce, some pieces started to be put together. And in 2006, we had an unbelievable team. And we ended up losing. We were unbeaten. We ended up losing to Birmingham in the finals. Really an epic game to EB. And we had beaten EB earlier in the season 5-0. And I was a nice guy, and I gave EB. I didn't know EB was a mastermind at that time, and I gave him a video of the game. Right.
Cool.
And, oh yeah, another regret. Along with Johan Cruyff. Just because I'm trying to be a nice guy, it'll come full story.
Yeah.
Just trying to build relationships, and
Yeah.
So we ended up losing in 2006, in heartbreak fashion to EB. We had the game in hand 2-1 at half, and then just the wheels came off. Well, no doubt the worst loss of my life, and it stung. I mean, that one stung for a while, and I ended up getting married that year, and the guys all came to my wedding.
Hold on a second. Jake, you still there? Hold on.
All right, so that very same year, all the guys came to my wedding. They all lifted me up, and it was great. And then the following year in 2007, we picked up a player, Willie. You probably know Willinho Velasquez.
Yeah.
Just unbelievable little player,
Yeah.
and really was the final cog in a dream team. We ended up going down to southern San Diego and playing in a West Coast Classic, which is at the time the biggest high school tournament in the nation. We're playing teams from Arizona, Texas, Washington. And we were the very first LA City team to ever be accepted into this tournament. It was just, you know how Southern Section, CIF, they kind of are a little snooty when it comes to LA City soccer.
Yeah.
And we ended up cleaning them all out. And, it ended up, the final game was on national TV. We played Loyola, which is a perennial powerhouse.
Yeah.
And it wasn't close. I mean, we dominated. So we ended up that season #1 in the nation. So then, these these things that kind of happen, step by step by step. And you pick up skills, you pick up, motivational tools, whatever it is, along the way. And really that 2006, 2007 year, they were unbelievable players. It's one of those teams you just kind of give them the ball and let them be themselves.
Yeah.
And then a couple years later, I picked up a player, Ezekiel Quijada, who went on to become the all-time LA City soccer scoring champion. And just, when I look back and I have to rank players in my Rolodex, he is up there. I mean, he was special as well. And he led us to 4 straight CIF championships along the way, and I some great players along with him. But when you got a guy up top who just lives and dies to score goals and's got the goods to back it up, physically, technically, and then you bring just that that's why they're the highest paid players in all the leagues. Are the goals?
Yeah.
They're special. Yeah. They are special.
Sure.
Which is why later on in my career, when I was playing professional, I wasn't as special as some of the other guys, and I kind of started to migrate. So I ended up as a right midfielder my last 3 or 4 years, because I could work hard and get up and back and score every now and then. But Ezekiel was just the greatest, and so that took and you can see behind me here.
Yeah.
And we went up there. What is that right there? A couple of state finals as well. Unfortunately, just kind of missed out. One of those state finals, we had to play at that time LA Cathedral, which was the #1 team in the nation, and that was another epic battle, but we fell short. So it's a great 22 years. It's when I look back, everything's timing and luck plays a little bit part of it, but it always comes back to at the end of the day, did you give it everything you can day in and day out? And I think I did. Maybe save for those first couple years of coaching in 98, 99, 2000. I might have not been able to say I gave it everything because it was all kind of new. But at the end of the day, when I look back, those qualities are, I think, what you put yourself in positions and work hard so that special things can happen, right? That's why we tell our players, don't give up until the very last. Special things happen. I was watching the replay today of a couple of the 88 finals of the Euro Cup, Holland versus, who was it, Russia, I think it was, when Marco van Basten scored that great goal. And then the Liverpool miracle in Milan. I was watching that. I'm like, Mac, you got to watch this. What?
That was in that game.
Don't give up, because special things can happen.
I was like, no way. And I was going for Milan. I was like, no way. Yeah. No way Liverpool's coming back. I was like, this game is done. I even told my brother, this game is done. This is done at halftime. I was like, we're just going to watch the second half and Milan's going to toy them. Nope.
Yeah,
he's like, no,
I know.
No, he's like, no, watch.
But that's why those things, the not giving up, the working hard till the end, the staying together, And then, things like conditioning, preseason conditioning, or, sticking to fundamentals when you're tired instead of doing, those things come into play where it's really special thing. And then a couple cool things like that happened with Canoga, last second goal to win it or to tie it, to send it into overtime. Just, you look back at the luck of the bounce, the luck of the ball, these things that could have gone either way. So very fortunate. I feel, when I look back, and, I don't know how many more years I'm going to coach high school. I'm not certain how long that's going to last. So I hold dearly the time that I had those last 22 years. The winning season and the losing seasons.
Yeah, of course. No, of course. And looking back on it, just hearing your story, I feel like the first few years you were still trying to kind of see whether I'm going to be all in or not.
Yep.
Right. And I think that's when you realize, when you go on, I think applies to anything. When you go all in on something and you say, I'm going to do this and fully commit, obviously it starts up here, right? Then everything else will be able to take care of itself, right? Like,
that's funny you said it jogged my memory about what those kids said to me that third year, in between the third and fourth year. I think they called me out because I left them for a game to go play in the tournament in Vegas, on Martin Luther King, and they didn't appreciate that, and I get it, right? I didn't put them first. And that's exactly right. I don't think I was all in at that time.
Yeah.
And that was that little coaching screw.
I think it's just us as humans. Like, we're not perfect,
Yeah.
and we're allowed to make mistakes, and we're allowed to find ourselves. And us as coaches, we try our best, and we try different things. And at times mentally, there's so many things as adults that are going on. And now as parents, you're thinking about this, you're thinking about this, but then when you're there, you got to be physically present, mentally present, so you can give these players your everything, right? And then in return, they'll see that, right? And kids are so smart, right? Kids are so smart. They'll recognize that, they'll feel that energy. And I feel like that's really what happened after that. It was just, like attracts like, and you're able, because of the type of person you are, the passion you have, and your commitment, you were able to attract those type of players into, which is very hard. It's very hard to have a program that continues to compete for a title every single year.
It is.
Right?
And it's funny when I look back, along with the seasons and what they were, as a reflection of a coach, I would have to say I've been 3 or 4 different kinds of coaches throughout the process. One was, that first phase was that neophyte coach just kind of, trying to find his way and learn how to communicate and lead young men. And then I did, if I remember correctly, and you probably known these, or maybe even been one at a point, but maybe not you, but I was definitely the angry coach, where I coached through, some threats and consequences. And, I went through that phase. And that might have been after the 07 phase, where, why can't all my teams be this good?
Yeah.
And then, you go through a little bit of a process where if you don't like the way your team is playing, then it's your fault, right? Mm-hmm. And then, so I also had my first kid at that time. And then there was a transition of me realizing I can't talk this way to young men anymore. It's not like it used to be. Where you could say, get your bleep bleep out of your, bleep beep and get your head. Can't do that anymore. And so you have to learn to transition to coaching through humanity, and changing lives. And that was another big realization. And it's at the end of the day, more enjoyable, and it's more valuable, and it creates better relationships. And, not to say even in my mean years, I don't have good relationships with them. I still do. One of my best friends in the world was my captain of that team, Luis Gavidia, who's gone on, and we butted heads, and I would yell at him and he would yell back, and just a really quality young man. He went on to the military, sergeant, And so, it's just a different style it's an evolution, right? That's what we need to do as coaches, as human beings, is evolve and constantly change. And I still not quite at the rate I evolved earlier when I was younger, but definitely this last transition, I do think I need to catch a little bit more of that edge with the Moorpark guys, the college guys. They need a little bit more of the disciplinarian. They need a little bit more of holding them accountable and difficult, because at that level, you're looking for perfection, right?
You don't have much time either.
Yeah, no, I know. And in high school, you're looking for improvement, and hopefully until the playoffs. You want to. But at college, there's no reason for them to be making little mistakes the way they do, and so they need to be held accountable, and they need to hold themselves accountable.
Yeah, of course. One question I have for you is, how important is your role, your occupation as a teacher, transitioning that what you learned off the field, on the field? How important is that to you?
Oh, I think they're absolutely parallel. I think all coaches are good teachers, and all teachers are good coaches, and parenting is good teaching, and parenting is good coaching. I think they're all in the same kind of web. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I think, you could look at the kinds of coaches that are out there, and I kind of break them into two categories. There's trainers, right? And there's the coaches who get out there, they put cones around, and there's a lot of movement, and there's a lot of activity, and there's enthusiasm, and that's great. I'm not going to say that's bad. And then there's coaching. There's why are we doing this? How does it relate to the game? And really, there's some coaches out there who will probably fall in both those categories, being good trainers and good coaches. And the good coaches, I think, know how to scaffold. The good teachers, they know how to scaffold objectives through their training and apply it to the game. So what I mean by that is, in teaching, there's this thing called Bloom's taxonomy. You ever heard Bloom's taxonomy? It's kind of this pyramid right here, and down here at the bottom of the pyramid is things like repetition. It doesn't take a lot of thought, but there's purpose in it. Like remember when you were doing your multiplication tables, your basic, they call it drill and kill. So there's repetition there, and just movements over and over and over. And the good teachers know how to build on that and take those repetitions and then bring them up into maybe patterns of play and get their players and their students up to this upper part of this pyramid, where they take what they've done in those lower parts of the pyramid, and now they become creative with it, right? Because isn't that what you want to do? Because the game is chaos, and at every specific moment, there's a plethora of potential decisions to be made. And the players who have solid fundamentals, who have learned through, whether it's our teaching or maybe they just got good gray matter, and they can be creative in the moment, are the ones that survive on the field, mostly. And so that's, when you talk about what you do in the classroom as an educator to what you do on the field, I think they're exactly the same. I mean, you should have lessons, you should have objectives, you should scaffold what the outcomes are, and your tests are the game. Did they apply? So if you were working on trying to create overloads with a wing back, getting over a right midfielder, during the week, and you're running patterns of play to elicit that, were they able to utilize it and in the game? And so taking what we do at practices, homework, classwork, whatever you want to call it, are they passing the test with a reasonable proficiency in the games? So I think they're completely hand in hand. If you're a good coach, you got to be a good educator. You got to be a good teacher. You've got to be able to explain, why are we doing this drill? And boys don't really ask that a lot. And I don't know if you know this, but I did coach the girls team this last year at Canoga. I was both the head men's coach and the head girls coach at Canoga. Wow. And so it was a unique experience, which I wanted to, because I had a couple daughters. And you do have to explain a lot. You got, whether it's just a regular drill, what Coach, why are we doing this? Okay, well, this is why we're doing it. You know, you tell the boy to do it. Okay, Coach, let's go do it.
Totally different. Yeah.
So it's a great question, and it's just one of those things. I think that when you look at a training session, you look at a club, you know, who are the coaches, who are the trainers, who are the teachers, and the good coaches are the good trainers and the good teachers.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It's a combination, a little bit of everything. I think it all comes down to you being able to teach. Of course, you being able to explain to, number one, understand it yourself. You know, you can't teach something that you fully don't understand. And I think there's a quote saying like, I think it's Einstein, if you can't explain to a 6-year-old, you don't understand it.
Yeah.
Right. So something as simple as that, like what you're teaching, you got to be able to, you can't just copy and paste. You can go online and find XYZ, you know, concepts and exercises and try to mimic that. But if you don't understand, you can't relate to your players, and it goes out the window, right?
Well, we call it, and they used to call it, I don't know if they say it anymore because it might not be politically correct to say, but they, you know, part of teaching was they had this acronym KISS, keep it simple, stupid, right? Mm-hmm. So if you can keep it simple, no matter what, you know, age you're coaching, you know, there's going to be good outcomes. I mean, you know, John Wooden, his three, along with the pillars, his 3 things were his big 3 things, and he could have done this with any sport. Conditioning, right? It's pretty simple. Fundamentals are very simple, you know, and that's at that lower Bloom's taxonomy, the fundamentals really. And then team unity, you know, the 3 things that drove him was conditioning, fundamentals, team unity. Let's get these things, you know, let's do it quick. Let's do the fundamentals. How quickly can we do this? How quickly can we get our first touch off and pass it to somebody? You know, so it doesn't become so much about, you know, this X go here, this Y, drag this player into that. I mean, it can come down to some very basic principles. Yeah. How quickly can we, you know, apply those principles together as an individual and as a team? And then it becomes speed of play, right?
Yeah.
And that's ultimately what it comes down to. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Good, great insight, because I think nowadays people don't realize, as coaches, you're a teacher. You know, you must be able to communicate. You must be able to understand your players. Doesn't matter what age, but you got to be able to communicate with them, and you got to build that trust, right? So, leading into the next thing I was going to ask you about. Now, we were talking about your story, and then obviously in 07, I believe it is, your first daughter was born, right? Was it 07 or 08?
08, yeah, 08.
So 08, right? Your first daughter's born, and you continue to coach, but you know, now fast forwarding, now you're a soccer dad, right? You're a girl dad, soccer dad, you know, and we a little quick story for those that don't know. I was coaching boys 07 team in CRL, which is California Regional League here in Southern California, and I think it was the first or second game of CRL. We play against
you guys Matt. Were good. You guys were the standard.
Oh, thanks, man.
For that age group and the style of play, believe me, whoever's listening, Coach Marino's team was the standard, and just really appreciate
I was fortunate enough to also have great players as well. So thank you, and appreciate that. And what I remember most was obviously the coaching. And one thing as a coach, what I do, I look at the other coach and I see how the other coach communicates, right, to their players, right? And that's just one thing that I naturally do. I kind of look at them, whether they know it or not. I'm watching, but I'm also watching what instructions they give. And there's a lot going on, right? And then I also watch the sidelines, because I want to see psychologically who listens to the coach or to the sideline, right? And obviously playing against you in high school and then getting to know you now as now coaches, right? It's like, oh, like that's Jake Gwin's daughter, right? It's like, that's Mac. And she was playing on a boys, right? 07, a year up, right? CRL team, which is massive, you know, that's huge. And she was holding her own. She was holding her own against the boys. And it's not easy, you know, it's not easy to play a year up. Not only that, against the boys and with the boys. So Now fast forwarding, you being a parent, how awesome is it just to watch your daughter grow and grow a love for the game? And how has that been for you personally?
Well, obviously, there's a lot of pride. Number one, she was way better than I was, at that age. I mean, it's not even close. It's a slippery slope to sometimes walk, as both a club parent and a coach, and then a coach of a daughter who's pretty good. So in the early years, there can be moments where there's some attacks on you for whatever reason. She was always one of the better players, and so there was some stuff on the sidelines that maybe just like when I was a young coach, I didn't react to the correct way, and so it was all a learning process. It really was. I mean, God, from the time she was playing, she started club at 5.5, 6 years old. Oh. And from 6 years old to 11 years old, it was a learning process because you've got to deal with some commentary. You've got to deal with, her being a marked player on some of the teams she was playing against. When she was on the girls' side, there was no doubt about that. And that led to some friction, obviously, because they would go after her. And I've learned over the years, no matter what, just I gotta keep, I just gotta not get involved in anything, because I think they know that I am a coach. They know, who I represent. And I've tried, in the early years, I was trying to develop relationships on the sideline, which was cool and fun. But at some point, they sometimes come back to haunt you. So I've kind of taken a little bit of a step back in terms of the relationships I build on the sideline, because I don't want it to affect anything that happens to her on the field. So, on the flip side of it, when I'm trying to give information to Mackenzie, sometimes she takes it, sometimes she doesn't. So that's a learning process, when to say something, when not to say something. Again, I'm not perfect as a club dad. I'm not perfect as a dad. I'm not perfect as a coach, and it's all a learning process. But this last year, she's with Real SoCal now, has been, wonderful. She loves playing the game. She enjoys it. I say nothing unless she wants to. Some of my best times during this lockdown is when I'm out playing with my tomatoes. I grow tomatoes. My hobby is growing a whole bunch of tomatoes. My backyard's filling. So I'm out there, playing with my tomatoes, and she yells out from there, "Dad, will you train me now?" And I just, that's daddom does not, for a coach, a soccer player, daddom does not get any better than that. And so it's learning that if this is going to happen for her, whether she ends up playing high level or not, the love of the game and the self-discovery is the most important. When, if I was just a dad who didn't know what he was talking about, that's one thing. But, as I've been told, unfortunately, you know what you're talking about. So it's hard. It's real hard to navigate. I'm going to be honest, it's probably harder to navigate this relationship than it is to navigate any of the other stuff. But it's been wonderful, and I've got a 6-year-old who's coming up, who's where Mackenzie, you remember, she would love to dance around you and use skill and be finesseful, and she's a beautiful dancer on the ball and all these things. This one that's coming up, she's just gonna, like we said, she's just gonna run right through you, So it's about the best coaching parenting journey I think anybody can go on. And it is a unique situation, and I'm not the only one. There's a lot of coaches out there who have daughters, and I appreciate all of them. I think we all handle it differently, but I feel really fortunate that that they've got some capabilities and some love, and I hope it's what it comes back to is the love of the game, because at the end of the day, at these tender years, right, and that's what we coach for, just instill that love, that carries them through to where they learn to. I fell in love with the game too late. I think if I fell in love with the game earlier, maybe I would have maybe reached another level. But that's ultimately what you want to come out of it, and then learning to work hard, right? Because it is a hard game we play. I mean, this is a hard game we play at the next level. The fun stuff is only about 4 or 5 minutes in the course of the game, right? Where you're either scoring goals, or you're assisting, or you're combining with players, you're nutmegging somebody, whatever it is, you're tackling somebody. That stuff doesn't happen in about 4 or 5 minutes in the game. The rest is just hard work. And I remember the game that she was playing against you guys in CRL. It was like an 80-20 possession. You guys had the ball the entire game. And so one of the things I appreciated about the coach, Jonathan Decker, is he taught them how to just hold the block, right, and shift side to side, clog lanes. And you do have to learn when you're playing against an overmatched opponent. This is just going to be a grind. So these things, when it comes to coaching, just going back to what trainings look like, I think we've got to do some of these things that they understand. This is not fun. Winning is fun, no doubt. Scoring goals is fun, but practices can't all be fun in games. I mean, they've got to do some things that they don't want to do. They've got to warm up without a ball, whatever it is. They've got to do the 15 minutes of fitness at the end without a ball. Some things that are just not inherently fun, but they've got to learn to do, because the game isn't always, quote unquote fun. And I think in these tender ages, when it's really difficult, because you're trying to instill love and this and that and keep them in the game. But at the end of the day, I think you've got to teach them that there are some moments and there's some games where it's just going to be flat out hard work and like a 10-mile run. That's why I used to go running 10, 12 miles for my training. It's not fun. None of it's fun. That's what we did with Mackenzie this morning. We went on a 3-mile run. She wanted to go. She asked to go. I didn't drag her. But it's not fun, but you finally get to the end of it and you look back and you go, man, I just did something really hard that was difficult. And I got to the end. There was not good moments in between. There were some other good moments, but we finished and we completed it. We completed it together, right? We completed it as a team. So those are some things that, in the long run, when it comes to the development of players, it can't all be fun and games, because those players who are super talented, right? Super good. But then they're down 3-0, and then what do? They just tune out. Right? Or even when they're up 6-0, what do? They start doing stuff that they don't normally do.
It's true. No, it's true. And going back to what you're saying, as for parents, I think that's the most important thing at these young ages, is making sure that you surround them and put them in a good environment where they're going to be learning, they're going to be challenged, and more importantly, they're going to have fun. Because everything else will not happen if they're not having fun. I think at the end of the day, we do certain things, we play sport because, we find it fun, and it becomes slowly, for those that get to that level.
They make it past that 13, 14-year-old mark, right? At 15, okay, I'm in.
Exactly. But I think you were spot on when you said about, having the players, your kid slowly, grow that love for the game. So that's key. That's great advice. I want to fast forward now into what you're currently doing with Moorpark College. I know you've been there for a few years. You handling the men's program there. What type of transition was it from high school now to college, and competing at that college level, dealing with, players that play 1 year, 2 years, transfers. How has that been for you?
Well, I was lucky enough to get my feet wet the first year under Sean Roach, and was the assistant. So I got a little bit of the rhythm, the lay of the land, how the season goes, what's required of a coach in a community college, the things that are necessary to get done. And it's a lot because at Moorpark, we don't have paid assistant coaches, right? They're voluntary or we pay them from a different fund. So a lot, the onus on running the entire program, falls on the head coach. I hold many hats. So the following year when I took over as the head coach, it's this paperwork here, the legality here. It was a lot to learn. The things that you have to learn to deal with, I remember, whether it was the following year or during the year, just in community college, some players will just kind of disappear. And I remember talking to one of the coaches, and they said, "Well, welcome to community college." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well, I don't want to accept that." We set out. I brought in an assistant and brought in, Evie's with me now. And I've got another assistant coach, Maria Shabata. She's my goalkeeper coach, and she is as good as it gets. She's an Ian Foyer disciple. Wow. And it's just as good as it gets. She's just reliable, just absolutely reliable.
Nice.
And we set out to make sure that these things don't happen, that there's retention. And I think that was one of the reasons maybe they might have hired me, because they know I'm an educator. They know the things that I hold a lot of value are academics. It's always, priority. And one of the big knocks on community college is the one and done thing, right? Because that first year in community college is essentially free. You just our season starts in August, which is the same time that the semester starts. You just have to be enrolled in 12 units. How that goes at the end, whether you pass the classes or not, but you still get to play. If you don't pass 24 units before the second season, you don't get to play. So we put a lot of things in place, a lot of support and resources for our student athletes, and our athletic director at Moorpark, Vance Monakas, is great. I mean, he's really all about helping the students succeed in the classroom so that they can succeed on the field, and done a wonderful job. And we were very supportive. Last year we were named the state scholar team of the year for all of community college, for all of men's soccer. Wow. Which was I think a testament to all of that, the administration, the teachers, the players, the support system that our AD put in. And those are the things that keep players coming back and keeps the retention. And I think on my roster this year, I've got close to 14 guys coming back. And for community college, that's pretty good. Yeah. And these are all great kids. Some of the kids you probably know. So those first couple of years, it was, difficult to learn, by the failure, the doing or whatever. But we put some pieces in place now. And it's all part of building the program, building the culture, building, the environment where players want to come back. They want to succeed. I can't say we've always had the best record. I mean, we didn't have a great record last year, but, if you look at our starting point, where we were as a team in terms of our knowledge and our talent and our skill, it was probably one of our most successful years. I mean, we had some players that started out as, 2-star players and ended as 4-star players, maybe a few 3-star players that ended as 5-star players.
Yeah.
So it was a really successful, our style of play was great. I mean, we held on to the ball really well. We just couldn't put the ball in the goal. We didn't have those Ezekiel kind of players who just, and
tough to find.
Yeah. No, it makes coaching a lot easier when you score goals. It really does. And so this last off season, and I wrapped it up. It's been an unbelievable off season. I pretty much had a lot of targets in mind. I identified, I evaluated, and I recruited them. And I think I got every single one of them, almost 12 guys. So I've got a roster of close to 28, 30 guys of new, really talented incoming players, along with the returners, that I think is going to, lead to a pretty competitive, pretty successful season. And in my fourth year, this is my fourth year. I think my fourth year as a head coach. I got to keep in that same, time frame that I did in Canoga, right? Yeah. Hopefully another worst to first kind of thing. So it takes time to build a program. It takes time to turn the culture around. It takes time to turn the stigma away from, when you go play against, some good community college teams, the Oxnards and the Santa Barbaras, for them to go into it and go, oh, we're going to have our hands full now with Moorpark. Because I think they do now. They know nothing is easy. We've beaten every team now a couple times. We just need to beat them a couple more. I think for this year's team, we're setting our sights on a top 3 finish. And aside from that, obviously making sure that those 14 guys that return go to a university, 4-year university, and those incoming freshmen return, so that there's consistency in the program and players don't want to leave for whatever reason. And Moorpark's really is for me heaven on earth every time I open up that gate. I know you've been in there probably if you've looked in that field and it's grass. It's heaven. So.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's exciting because it seems like you're ready for that next challenge where you're at. Obviously, you've been coaching high school for some time. What do you look for in an ideal recruit? For somebody's like that wants to play at the college level. What is something? Obviously, it all depends on the system and what pieces they have already. But if you were to say, look, I'm looking for, what traits would a player have that you're specifically looking for?
Well, we got to be careful not to get into that issue that I think ODP found themselves in back in the 80s and 90s, which was, when they picked the program, the state team, the regional teams, the national teams, everything was done on a weekend tournament, and scouts would look at the players out there and who were the players that got picked?
Fastest, strongest.
Well, they were the most skilled guys too. I mean, they were really technical. And then on the flip side, we can have a conversation about the fastest and strongest, mainly on the girl side, I think, is way more than on the boy side. But it was the guys who stood out. They were flashy and, ended up kind of maybe being one-dimensional. And so but those are the things that stick out first, right? When we go to look, oh, it's got a great touch. And then so, we got to continue that. But those are the 3 stages of recruiting: is the identification. Oh, okay, he's got skill, he's got some talent. Okay, now let's evaluate him. Let's see how he is, throughout the course of the season. Let's go look at a game that we know they're going to smash somebody 6-0. What does it look like? What is he doing now? If the coach pulls him at 3-0 and he's on the bench, what is he like there? Let's go look at a game where they're going to get smashed 6-0, like I said before. What are they going to act like on the field? Are they still going to grind their way through, or are they going to start throwing little fits? So that's the evaluation process. And the final one is the recruitment process, obviously. And so we want players who are talented. There's no doubt about that. We want players who are talented. We want players who treat their teammates well. They're good teammates. That you don't see the demonstrative behavior, why'd you do this? Why'd you do that? Because, at the college level, if you miss a pass and you sit there and have a conversation with somebody about it, boom, 2 seconds, they're down in front of your goal scoring correctly. So, we got to make sure that we're recruiting players who treat each other well, who know the business. And then they just, the key word there that you hear all the time is they have good character. And, it's used a lot, but it's true. So you want talented, hardworking, good character players who have a plan. I brought in some players from Oxnard who were super talented. They didn't quite have the academic plan in mind, and it was going to be a grind. And they ended up leaving, so I want players who actually have a plan. And I love when they tell me this. I recruited a kid a couple weeks ago, and the first thing he says, as I'm trying to go after him, me and another coach, Byron, right? Byron.
Yeah.
Me and Byron were going after this guy together, and Byron really wanted him bad, and so I'm on the phone with this kid, and he says one of the first things, well, I don't know if you know, Coach, and Dan Metcalf steered me onto him as well. I want to be a professional, right? Boom, awesome. Okay. But in the United States, the path to professional is through the academic realm, and he's got a great background in academics as well. So I just want kids who have a lot of those qualities. They have plans, and they work hard, and they know that, I know some of them live in the valley, and come to Moorpark, and it's a grind to get there. But, again, that's part of that discipline. That's part of that commitment. That's part of that hard work, which are all those things that are still wrapped up in the game, in being successful at the game, and this is a conversation I have with them. This is what I'm looking for. And so, when it comes to recruiting player, and obviously it's not going to be 100%, we've got a really difficult preseason planned, our summer sessions, and it's going to be real difficult. And so we know who we're going to be working with, because we do have some really talented players. But I know you've heard this. Yeah, it's when talent doesn't work hard, hard work beats talent. So that's at the end of the day, you want a talented, hardworking team. Simple, right? Kiss.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, kiss.
Absolutely. No, it sounds like it's going to be an exciting year, and I know there's obviously the situation right now. There's a lot of uncertainty, but we're hoping to be on the other side of this very soon. And obviously get back to the field and get back to normality, whatever that will look like in the near future. But it's definitely something that we're all looking forward to. But what's one thing right now that you're currently doing with Moorpark through this to stay connected?
Well, we wrapped up my spring class. We kind of ad hoc had to resort to Zoom conferences for our spring class. Yeah. That was in the second or third week of March. So I realized early on that I was going to have to develop some skills, some coaching skills through distance learning. So I used that spring class as I'm going to say the word practice module, because I'm in 3 or 4 different distance certification programs right now. Some are required, some aren't required, but it's all about modules. And so I've got to figure out ways to disseminate information and teach and get them fit through an online platform, right? You guys are probably doing the same thing. So we're in the process of using this platform called Canvas, which is what VCCD does, Ventura Community College District. So we're developing our curriculum right now as we speak, actually, through obviously Zoom conferencing. We've got a program, we've got videos that we're creating, PowerPoint. The PowerPoint, I think, is going to be extremely useful, and it's really good. It allows for our chalk talks. You've got a chalkboard behind you. So for example, how you'd have to take some practice time or whatever it was and take them through defensive rotations, in person. Now it's actually really easy to do on Zoom through PowerPoints or Google Slides, whatever it is, and interlay videos. This is what it needs to look like. I've got videos of our games. This is what a 9-10 rotation looks like, whatever you want to call it, and just develop more tools and ways to keep the kids motivated, because, and I still say this to them whenever we meet, the kids that are going to be most successful coming out of this time are the ones who are just inherently, intrinsically motivated, who are going to go out there and when no one's watching, work that extra, 10%, the 110%, when you're doing fitness, because it's kind of easy. I know I was the player. I always did much better when people were watching. Mackenzie's a little bit the same way. When it's just me and her doing stuff, and then when somebody, I'm gonna be on it. But and it takes me back to a quote. There's a great book out there called "Catch Them Being Good" by Tony DiCiccio, and he's talking about watching Mia Hamm. What a sign of a champion is, and it's bent over in absolute exhaustion, sweat dripping off, your lungs are expanding and contracting at a rate that doesn't look normal, and nobody's watching, right? You're there by yourself. And I think those are the kids that are going to, that desires, the ones that are going to be most successful in this current phase that we're in. And that obviously, if we ever get out of this, which we hopefully will soon, they're going to be ahead of the curve.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. And I think the habits are really exposed right now in everything, your daily habits, your obviously your character. And there's a lot of things obviously that we can't control, but there's one thing that somebody that I actually had on before, he came out on Soccer Today, said control the controllables, right? Control the controllables. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Coach Jake, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. Any last words, any advice on any coaches coming up on, potentially looking to get into high school coaching or college level? What advice would you give them?
The only thing I'll ever say is just continue to evolve, continue to learn, continue to try to do things, continue to be creative and try to be innovative. And, again, my lesson was good outcomes in the short, maybe it happens in the short term, the teaching through consequence or coaching through consequence and threats is never good in the long run, and inspire and coach through humanity because good things happen. And like we said, special things can happen at the end of the day, at the end of the game, at the end of your life, whatever it is. And you look back when you're a good human and you treat people well and you evolve and you continue to learn, that's what we do as people. We try to find value in what we do, give back to the community. And I think you're prime example of that. I've been able to donate some equipment for you and your foundation that goes to Central America, giving back to the community and being, in service to the community. And not just coaching individuals, try to create leaders. We need more good leadership out there. We need better human beings. We need people to be able to make good decisions, whether it's on the field or off the field. And that's all, we're not just coaches, of soccer. We wear a lot of hats. Like you said, we influence a lot of people. And, at 22 years, my Rolodex gets bigger and bigger, and I get more proud and more proud that I still keep in contact with them. And it brings value to my life, along with my family and my children. The influence that you have on young people, what greater calling can there be? And, than to have influence on the young children and young people of America, than making them better athletes and better people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you again. It's been a pleasure. Great advice. We appreciate your time. We hope to see you on the other side of this very soon.
Likewise.
Keep up the great work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you again. And we'll talk soon. Thank you again for being on.
All right. Thank you very much.
Have a good one.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.